Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today would have been the birthday of Chris Squire. Now, Chris Squire was unique not only in being one of the inventors of what we now call progressive rock, but he was also someone who took the bass and the bass guitar in particular into places it had never gone before. Now, the bass is traditionally thought of as an instrument that is there to sort of fill out the lower end and sort of you're in the background and you'd miss it if it were gone, but you're not paying much attention to it if you were there. Now, people in multiple genres have challenged this assertion that exists in multiple genres. There's Serge Koussevitzky, who was the one-time maestro conductor of the Boston Symphony, and he wrote, because it was his instrument, a bass concerto, one of the only ones that anyone's ever heard of, and even that one hasn't been recorded too much. Even he only played the second movement and only did it with a piano accompanist rather than the full orchestra. In the jazz world, greats like Ron Carter, Monk Montgomery, and others in the early days of sort of bebop and hard bop and modal jazz tried to challenge that. Charlie Mingus was a multi-instrumentalist and composer, but he was primarily a bass player, but more people, I suppose, remember him as the composer and visionary than the bass player itself. Now, come the era of the electric bass guitar in the jazz world, one of the pioneers of this was Monk Montgomery before everyone in the fusion era of the late 60s and 70s started to play. And Jack Bruce, I would consider one of the great first electric bass guitarists. I consider him a jazz fusion blues rock musician all rolled into one. He played in all of those genres and took all of them very much forward. John Entwistle of The Who, the only truly musically gifted member of the band. Pete Townsend, a gifted writer. Keith Moon, a really exciting drummer who did to the drums something that has always been a part of drum set performance, but although he wasn't a technician, but John Entwistle was a technician. He was a virtuoso. And then came Chris Squire, who became known to the world when Yes came out in 1969. And he really played the bass, not just like a lead instrument, which John Entwistle did, but an instrument that actually was the only lead instrument in the band that was holding it all together because everyone was playing a bit of everything, and there'd be solos and there'd be interesting little side tangents. The music was very compositionally rich, and the blurred lines between solos and melody lines within Yes music made it incredibly unique. Even the vocals, John Anderson's vocals, were somewhat they served a different purpose than that of a traditional singer. It was part of it was integral to the melody, integral to the harmony. And as John said himself, his lyrics aren't so much created for the meaning, but for the sound, and people can then assign the meaning later. And throughout all of this, Chris Squire was not only the most consistent member of the band up until his death, but he really held the whole thing together, all the while playing lead bass. Not an easy thing to do. And one of the reasons that he was able to do this was the sonic texture of the bass. It was very much a mid-range heavy bass sound. In some cases, it was even trebly. The timbre, the sonic textures he created were very different than almost any other bass player before or since. And where some bass players sat into the background, Chris was right up front and center. And because of the tone that he got out of the Rickenbacker and other instruments he played, he was always there to cut through, whether in a crowded stadium or on record. And bass players the world over have been inspired by him. He's really someone who, unlike a lot of greats, he did receive a lot of very justified recognition in his own time. And it's just sad that he left us too soon. Quite a dogmatic guy to work with, and the final years were somewhat soured by his treatment of John Anderson. But that's the music business and that's life. But it's the music itself that was the most important. So rest in eternity and power, Chris Squire, one of the very finest to ever do it. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.